we're going to be talking about the Airbnb incident that I've had with a racist dog and their owner, and sort of what has happened in the aftermath of sort of being stuck at that Airbnb with that situation. But I just want to upfront acknowledge the irony and the fact that even though this is hurtful, racist, and just taking a lot from me and my time and safety and all of those terrible things, it is also incredibly funny to think that an owner will tell me about that they have a racist dog that only bites black people, which was the key point of contention. But yeah, Julie, thank you for being here, but also thank you for helping me through this situation that's still ongoing.
Yeah, and always love connecting with you, and it really sucks that we have to connect over this. I wish it were over something different. And so I think we need to name that. And then the other irony of the racist dog against the founder of an anti-racist hot dog movement.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So
that is
I
funny.
I think I think that it's really important that you share your story and your
Yeah,
account of
yeah.
what
What happened?
happened and what you went through and the process that you went through and that I went through to try to make Airbnb hold Airbnb accountable. And
Yeah,
so, do you want to start with sharing from the beginning?
yeah, for sure. Yeah, so I left home on the 5th of October, so 2 days ago, to go book myself into an Airbnb for a month. So I wanted an oasis. I wanted a quiet space, a place uh, that had Wi-Fi, a yard. It had a pool. Just relaxing amenities, so that I could focus on my startup, the Antiracist Hotdog, and just work from there. So when I got there, I got in, everything was fine. One of my mates helped me bring my bags and everything, and then um, the host kept saying, "Hey, when you're ready, let's talk about housekeeping issues." I was like, "Oh, okay, cool. Let's just set up first." So we set up. My friend left, and then I called the host, who had told me before she left. She's like, "Hey, you know, you can't just come into my side, but I'll explain things. Um, when we have the housekeeping issue, that conversation." So cool. So she went to our side. We finished, and then I called her. So she came in, and she was like, "Yeah, so I have some housekeeping issues, but really there was one housekeeping issue, and that is one rule, and it's like, hey, I have a dog, and this dog is racist, and the dog only bites black people." And I have an audio taping of this conversation. How did I have an audio taping of this conversation? Because she said it to me, and then she brought out the dog, and then when she brought out the dog, I had the tape ready, so I asked her leading questions, um, which, where she says the stuff again. Now, we have the conversation. She's like, "I've got racist dog. It bites black people." I was like, that's interesting. I was like, so, um, has there been any incidents? She's like, well, the dog has bitten all her black workers. So she's got like maids that work for her. So it's bitten all her black workers. And how this house is, it's like, think of like a giant house that's divided into three, like one house, one apartment, sort of like row house, sort of attached thing. So the yard is shared in a way. So it's like, we need to coordinate between when you're out and into sort of the yard or leaving, and when the dog is out, right? So I had to have like a schedule with the dog, because if we mixed, the dog will eat me. I was like, dang. I was like, okay, what breed is this dog? So it's like, oh, like this dog is like part pit bull and a part of mix of different things. I was like, okay. And then she was like, I rescued this dog. It's a rescue dog. I think highlight, I think they took it from the townships because that's the only thing that explains why it's so racist. Now the township is a black neighborhood in South Africa, so that's like I think they took it from Compton or Harlem, etc. But which doesn't make sense if it was taken from the townships, then it would be familiar with black people and wouldn't be biting black people. So that to me doesn't make sense. But her rationale is that the dog must have been hurt by a black person, and that's why it's racist. And she's like, yeah, but I can't get rid of the dog just because she has an issue. I just need to keep her and love her, blah blah blah. I was like, I bet. And then there's a video of me like inside the Airbnb, like with the gates locked and the glass door locked, and the dog is like walking around, sort of looking at me. I think it's important at this point to note that number one, the owner did not disclose if they have a pet in on Airbnb, which is grounds for cancellation and full refund from Airbnb, and sort of some sort of repercussions for the owner. Let alone a racist dog, if that's a thing. So that's why it gets a little funny. So, as soon as that she left, I started like sort of complaining. I called my friends to call Airbnb. I didn't feel safe. There was a dog who's ready to eat me in the yard, and this was not what I signed up for. It was none of this was on the list. So, I called Jillie, and Jillie, I'll bring you in a few minutes, in a few here. But anyway, Jillie tries to contact them. I try to contact them. I think Jillie first sort of takes the lead in contacting them, and I don't. But as she does that, I try to like thug it out and sleep for a night at this Airbnb. This is like afternoon, like. But then when the doors were closed, because when I came in, all the doors were open, etc. So it smelled okay. But when the doors were closed, you could realize that they had freshly painted over mold. So there was the smell of, fresh paint and its toxins and the mold. So I couldn't even sleep, that night. But I also couldn't like come out because of the dog. So I felt a little imprisoned in my own Airbnb. So that's the account to this point. Jilly, what was your experience, reaching out to them and trying to help me get to resettle to a new place?
Yeah, well, I think first of all, like you sent me the recording within 2 hours, I think, of checking in, right?
Yeah,
And then the
yeah,
video of the dog where it is like you literally look caged as the dog is pacing back and forth, like
yeah,
keeping you in. Like you don't have the freedom to leave. And like it is so apparent for the video. And
yeah.
so I decided to, yeah, like help you out and contact Airbnb. So I contact them through the messaging app for a safety issue. And, they keep saying, like, we take safety extremely seriously. You can call the local authorities if you're in imminent danger or contact us, right? So then I called them on your behalf, and it was continual. I can't talk to you unless you're the account holder. I can't talk to you unless you're the account holder. Tell him to call us or tell him to message us, right? Or they first said message, like tell him to message us and make you the primary account holder. Tell him to message us and make you the primary account holder, right? And so that was what I was told by 3 different people was the fastest, best way was to make me the primary account holder, to advocate for you, to get you moved, refunded, put in a safe place. So then I told you, make me the primary account holder through the messaging, right? And what happened?
Yeah, I think from there I went and made you the primary contact person.
But
Um,
it took
but
3.5 hours. It
yeah,
took
it took three and
three
a
and
half
a
hours.
half hours
Yeah,
before
of
they,
calling, texting,
yeah,
and I'm in South Africa by the way, so I'm calling a South African an American number. So you can imagine sort of like the international call rates and the gymnastics that I had to get through just to be able to sort of call. But it's also like was very interesting because every time you called, you got like the same repetitive messaging at first, but very different outcomes when you got to the actual issue. So it's like, oh, welcome. We're really sorry. We're here to help. Can we have your name? Can we have your ID? Like the verification was the same, but the people who were calling didn't quite have an idea of how to solve the problem. The only thing they would keep saying was like, oh, we will escalate this problem. Like
Yes.
20 calls through. Yeah.
I literally was on the phone for 5 hours that day,
Yeah.
on hold, being passed off from one representative to the other. And I think it's important to name that, like, you were traumatized, right, by this racial
Yeah.
encounter. And so
Oh,
instead of
100%.
putting the emotional burden on you to continue fighting and continuing to have to share your story and continuing to have to waste time on this nonsense, like, policies, right? And this procedure that you have to go through. I was like, here, let me do it so that you can continue working. You already had a traumatic day. Go take care of yourself. Let me be the advocate for you. And so they wouldn't let me, right? So it was like, no, let the victim of this situation, they have to call. They're the one that has to continue sharing their story. They're the one that have to continue, like, kind of advocating for themselves. And so I talked to person after person after person, after being put on hold. Like, they're like, oh yeah, we're gonna transfer you to the what is it, the safety and trust team or something. Put me on hold for 30 minutes, hoping that I would be disconnected. And then when I was approached again by someone else, an ambassador, they asked why you weren't calling. And I explained why I decided I wanted to, like, support you and take this on for you so that you could rest and take care of yourself. They called me. I told
And
them that
not get
this was
eaten by the dog.
and not get eaten by the dog, right? And feeling unsafe, like that in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, if you don't feel safe, everything else
Yeah.
is out the window, right?
Yeah.
And so I told them that, like, we do need to talk about this policy because it's an inherently racist policy and they're perpetuating systemic racism. And they called me belligerent and unprofessional and then threatened to disconnect me for saying that about their policies. So I also wanted to make sure that
Yeah.
that was said.
Yeah, and I think it's important to also address the fact that had I been in more imminent danger outside of just being logged in with their pit bull outside, like if it was a woman getting raped, and was somehow able to sort of text them, or call them, or someone who was being shot at, um, the fact that they wouldn't let even the point of contact help out is inherently problematic, but also their response time and rate, and the idea that we are on day 3 of this incident now and it still hasn't been resolved just goes to show how much Airbnb cares about their customers, particularly in this case, customers facing racial discrimination of color in their listings. But yes, please continue.
Yeah.
Oh, just
So
also to explain to people like why you were the one calling. I asked you to do that because I talked about the idea is like the mental toll of racism, right? I was like, I'm already facing this directly. Can you help take some of the burden out and sort of complain to Airbnb from America, since it's an American company there, and maybe you'll have more leverage as I deal with the situation at hand. So I think it's painful that like the victim has to face discrimination, but also then has to face discriminatory policies and sort of fighting for themselves. And it's important to realize like I've lost 3 days of my life. I missed a talk at the University of Waterloo in Canada where I was talking about informal settlements, race, and architecture. I've missed 3 days of work, but no one ever talks about the compensation for that. Outside of just like talking about maybe a refund for the stay or whatever, which we're going to get to. But like, what about the physical, emotional, mental, and financial loss that comes with racist incidents like this? So I was glad to have a friend like Jillie to help me um, alleviate some of that load by her having conversations with them.
which was the whole point, but
Which
that
didn't work
wasn't
so well.
allowed. Yeah, which wasn't even allowed because of their policy. So after 3.5 hours, when they finally made me a point of contact, which took over an hour after you had submitted the request and verified everything. It took over an hour for them to even make me point of contact. So then when I finally called and said, this is, my friend is in South Africa. He had racial discrimination, harassment. This is what happened. They were like, what proof do you have? And I was like, I have an audio recording of him recording the host talking about the racist dog and how he is not safe there and the dog is bred to attack black people. And they go, is that the only proof you have? And I said, I also have a video recording that he sent me of the dog walking, pacing back and forth, caging him in. And they go, is that the only proof you have of this discrimination? And I said, I don't know how much more proof you need, but yes, that's all I have. And they were like, well, we can't do anything because you aren't the person that's experiencing this. So after being made the point of contact, and so then after all of that, you still had to carry the burden, on
Yeah.
top of the burden you already were carrying.
I had to add another 5 hours just to get through to them myself. And I think one of the important things that I told you when you're reaching out to them is like, hey, let them extract me, get me out of here, get me into a new listing that is safe without contacting the host. I was like, man, I'm already feeling unsafe. I'm already feeling discrimination. The last thing I want is now to fight with this white lady with her coming to tell me, oh, I'm not racist, and she comes with her dog, whatever. You know what I mean? Like, I was just like, can you just get me out here? This is not what I paid for. This is not what I signed up for. Just get me to an Airbnb. This is the cost of being black. It's like we constantly have to choose between our dignity and being productive and doing work, because I could have just tried to ignore that and actually did my talk with the University of Waterloo, which would have paid me and did work. You know what I mean? So in this case, obviously, I chose my dignity, and it's sad because all I wanted was just, a place to rest, you know, without having to negotiate my dignity or well-being or safety. But it happened. So I spent the next 5 hours trying to talk to these guys. Eventually, I get through to someone, and person after person, like, we've escalated, right? Um, but I think there's like in their hierarchy system, you can only call like these like low level um, um, consultants, voice consultants, which to be honest, I felt like they were reading a script. So it's normally like those, like somewhere like in Pakistan, or um, those companies that just take calls and then send them messages. Because with that 5 hours of reaching out, it took another 5 hours before I started getting contact from the people that they were quote unquote escalating things to. So essentially, like the next day, for the most part. So what I ended up doing was I woke up early before like the dog owner and the racist dog had woken up, and then I ran to a coffee shop, and worked from there for the day. I was like, I'm not going. I left all my stuff. And like, I'm not going there until I get rehoused. So I spent there. I was there from the whole morning. Again, I'm texting them. It's like, oh, we're really sorry. We've escalated this. Eventually, someone calls me at around 2 p.m. Now, I just want to start mentioning names so that you know, we're very specific here of who called me for this. So one second, I'm scrolling through the Airbnb app.
So as you do that, I wanted to mention two other things. Was when Wandile asked for the host not to be contacted, I said that at that time I was like still talking to them, and I said, the one ask that he has is that the host is not contacted until after he is extracted and safely rehoused. And the woman was like, I can't promise you that. And I was like, can you explain why? And she was like, I'm on a recording and I can't make promises on a recording. And so then I said, he is in danger and is unsafe in his housing. Can you give me a timeline of when someone will contact either him or I that we can expect to get him out? Because at this point it was almost midnight your time. And she
Yeah.
said, no, I can't give you a timeline. This is going to be escalated. 5 different people told me that it was going to be escalated. She said, because I'm being recorded, I'll get in trouble if I say any sort of timeline. So I can't tell you when you or him will be contacted. So I can't make a promise that the host will not be contacted. I'm just going to put a note, and I hope that the next person sees it. And I can't give you a timeline.
Wild. Oh, this person. Oh, Louisa, Luiza. She said, "Hello, Wandile. I am Louisa with Airbnb. I'm reaching out to inform you that Airbnb has determined we are unable to support reservation with Linda, and Linda is the lady who owns a racist dog, and we'll be moving forward with canceling it immediately. I'll be calling you shortly to provide more details. We hope you understand that these types of cancellations are rare, and we made this decision in the best interest of our community, including both our hosts and guests, to promote a safe, trusted platform, hosting and traveling." I just want to highlight the part like, we hope you understand that these types of cancellations are rare, and we made this decision. Do they want candy? That they made the cancellation? Like, they want candy for the bare minimum of having put me in an unsafe location and then cancelled that. Man. Anyway, please know that our team is actively working to ensure you have a positive experience on Airbnb. If you have any additional questions, please let me know. Best. Also, if you need if you need a place tonight, let me know. I can help you in an urgent rebooking. I'm looking forward to hearing from you. I was like, I'm in the streets and urgently need a place to stay tonight. I was told the team would contact me and extract me and take me in a new and safe booking, and I'm still waiting on that. She's like, can you please look for these options where I can relocate you to comfortable and safe hotel? I find a hotel, and then it's like, please, if you can go to a coffee place or any place you can eat and wait for the relocation, we can offer you a meal of $100. I only need that you send me the receipt for us to transfer this amount for you. Look at the hotel options and let me know which one is best for yourself. So I look at the hotel options and I choose one. She says, okay. Also, if you prefer to look for a hotel yourself, you have this option to find a hotel for $325 a night for at least 3 nights. After that, we're going to look for a new Airbnb for your rest of your stay. We only need that you send us the receipt for the hotel in that way. Anyway, we found a hotel. I'm in that hotel right now that they booked for me, and I went and checked in. Now, this is where it gets interesting. She, clocks, and then she sends me Airbnbs, and then she says, 1 second. Okay, yeah. So she sends me Airbnbs, a list of 5, and considerably nice Airbnbs. And there was like, choose one, and we'll book you into this one. So I choose one. She's like, sorry, this one someone just booked it. Okay, I choose the second one, and I think her shifts end and she leaves, so she doesn't book that. And then I get a new person who I've been talking to today. The new person says, unfortunately, we are unable to move you from one listing to another or make a booking on your behalf. Based on the report you made, a full refund for your previous reservation was issued to your preferred payout method. Now, two important points. The first lady, I mentioned her name, I forgot right now. Louisa, she said Airbnb is going to put me in a new booking. They apologize. It's going to replace my current booking, and they can put me in any booking that I choose out of the list they sent. One, up to two times the daily cost of where I was. I was like, oh, cool. So I chose one, and then she checked out. This one came in. First, she also gave me the options, and then I chose that same one. And then she's like, oh, and then she comes back to me and says, I see that your refund has already been processed. Please send a message to the host to confirm they are available. This will allow you to send a message to the host before committing to payment by submitting a reservation to request. So in other words, so they're backtracking now. They're like, oh, we've sent a refund, which I never asked for. I just want a place to stay because I paid for it and I signed up for. And then I go to my PayPal to look at the refund. All of the refunds that they sent me are about $120 to $150 less. So basically, for that racist night that I spent there, where I couldn't even breathe, basically staying up all night, they've charged me $120 to $150. That's one. And then number two, this lady says she cannot help me because they're unable to move you from one listing to another or make a booking on your behalf based on the reports you made, a full refund for your previous reservation. And also, there's no longer any talk about Airbnb covering any of the difference for the listings that they sent me as options. So I'm back to square one, where I'm stuck at this hotel for 3 days, and I need to find myself a new Airbnb. And I was refunded $120 to $150 less than the amount that I had paid, and she has stopped responding to my texts. And this particular Airbnb support person who I'm talking to now, where I'm having these issues, her name is Crystal. Crystal.
So, okay, so let's like go over this for a second. Okay, so one, you missed out on a paid gig for work. You missed out
Yeah.
on 3 days of work.
Yeah.
You booked this Airbnb for mental health reasons, also for work, to
Yeah.
to have space for yourself, right? To work and to work on your startup. Um,
Yeah.
None of which happened, right? It was unsafe. Your mental health suffered.
Yeah.
And then you had to fight for 3 days, hours upon
Yeah.
hours upon hours, which also took you away from work in order
Yeah.
to try to make this right. Then
Yeah.
it costs you $150.
Yeah.
This experience, not like out of your pocket, right? $150 plus the work that you missed.
Yeah.
Right? And now they're going back on their word, and now you have to still pay for
Pay
the
more
future.
on their platform. Yeah.
So you still have to pay them more on their platform because you're paying their everything. Yeah.
Yeah. To find a new location, I still have to look for a new location. So
Yes. Yeah.
I think one of the things that helped them to respond is because I tweeted about this experience and it went viral. Folks were retweeting about it in South Africa, in the UK, and some in the United States as well. So they couldn't like ignore me, which is what I've heard happens to a lot of other people facing similar incidents. As I saw in the comments on that tweet, over 27,000 people um, liked that tweet, about 5,000 retweets and quotes. So that really helped. So thank you to all the people on Twitter. And Airbnb kept coming. It's like, oh, again, we're here to help. But I'm like, but I've been texting you all and calling you all for hours, but they wouldn't respond. Then again, we're here to help. So a lot of virtue signaling. And this is very disappointing, especially since I just recently heard Airbnb is partnering with Obama Foundation to create like an Obama Scholars Fund as an Obama leader as part of the foundation. I think this is inherently problematic, especially for a company that clearly doesn't care about the health, safety, and well-being of its customers, particularly customers of color, and they aren't doing anything to address that. I mean, shout out to them for putting money towards that fund that's going to sort of help create the next generation of these political leaders. But what are they doing to address diversity, equity, and inclusion? I looked at their policy. So they have a very comprehensive policy on inclusion for the United States, but basically their policy for inclusion for the rest of the world is like, oh, do whatever you want, which is inherently problematic. The one thing they had was like, if the owner writes something discriminatory on their listing, they'll ask them to take it down, or they may suspend them. Um, so what's funny about this whole situation is that, like, based on their policy, they're more likely to reprimand Linda, the owner who owns a racist dog, for not disclosing that she has pets, because they're like, oh, if you don't disclose things, then they can suspend or reprimand you. They're more likely to like reprimand or suspend her for not disclosing that they have pets than for sort of racism and exclusion that I faced there.
So it's a U.S. based company that has a comprehensive policy around diversity, equity, and inclusion that is only to the U.S. So they're only holding U.S. people accountable and yet benefiting from racism around the world.
100%. 100%. And Brian Chesky is the first one to talk about inclusion on Twitter. They released a statement talking about creating inclusion and how they're investing in that. With 2020, but this is the experience. Like a lot of Twitter people were black people and people of color were saying, like, why are we still supporting this company when they've clearly and repeatedly shown that they do not care about us, even though we keep giving them our money. People were saying, well, why didn't you just go to a hotel? You wouldn't have had to deal with a racist host and deal with all of these things. And it's very sad because, Airbnb, as a startup founder myself, has a very inspirational story of how they got that company off the ground and the amount of market share they've been able to get in trying to replace hotels. But it's ironic that, you're treated better at hotels, and that's when this incident happened. The first thing they did was to put me in a hotel themselves. So I guess we're doing this video to bring awareness to sort of the treatment of people of color, black people, but in general victims, at Airbnb listings, and how Airbnb policy is fundamentally flawed and broken, particularly in for the international world, and sort of encourages such incidents to continue happening of race. And I'm not the first one to report it. I've read an article, I've heard someone else, and clearly still there's no change, and I'm still stuck here in limbo. So we want to bring about awareness, but also see if I can get help to get out of this situation. I think the Resolution Project, another organization I'm a fellow of, is already also trying to work on helping me sort of get out of this situation. But yeah, I'm incredibly disappointed, hurt, and I think this is really sad. And I think as a people, we all deserve better.
Yeah. And I think, another thing that I heard you say too is there has to be policy change within and accountability within any business and any organization, and especially Airbnb. And so I think that's another call to action here is there needs to be a policy change.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm happy to be part of that conversation on what that policy change could look like. But there needs to be a policy change. Like, this cannot be how people are treated. Also, like, What about someone who doesn't have the means to call internationally, like I did?
Right.
Um, but yeah, there
Yeah.
needs to be change.
And I'm going to do a shameless plug here that I know of a great diversity, equity, and inclusion startup called the Antiracist Hotdog that would be an amazing
Yeah,
consultant to
yeah,
consult with for
yeah,
Airbnb. I'll
yeah.
do a
And I
little.
think this is like, I love that. I think this is a great way to sort of end this call, going back to that irony that the anti-racist hot dog founder finally matches up with the racist dog at an Airbnb listing. Shout out to Airbnb for making history in that Royal Rumble. But anyone watching this video, if there's any way you can help us amplify the voice, help us get this message out, whether to the New York Times or any major publication, something really needs to change. I want this incident to end with me. I don't want other people to go through what I've had to go through and lose everything that I've had to lose.
And
Thank you very
I'm
much for
so
staying
sorry.
this long and listening to us.
Yeah. Thank you. And thank you, Wandile, for, even though it's been at the expense of you, having the courage and the commitment to ensure this doesn't happen to someone else. So thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Jillie, for being a true ally and helping me and making those calls. Thank you. Bye, everyone.